G'day, I'm Bruce. In this video I'm going to try and get this VW pump engine running that hasn't been in service for many years. This is actually my second attempt at getting this motor to run properly. Last year I did have another go at it, but this time I'm going to have to pull the carburetor apart and just see if I can find whether it's a main jet blocked or something in there is pretty badly blocked. We came here a few days ago to have a look at what we needed to do the job on the carburetor. Anyway, the cameraman got up and he just grabbed a hold of this, climbed up here, he just grabbed a hold of this and went like that. Well, you just ought to see the wasps. They just swarmed around everywhere. They were biting him on the neck, and anyway, that's where they were. They were sitting up there like that. So anyway, he jumped down and we ran around and got some spray and wiped them out with a spray. There it is, pretty fair nest all right. Here's the intake system on this Volkswagen engine. It's a 1200cc Volkswagen engine. We're going to have to get that intake pipe off and then work our way down. Probably take the fuel line off, throttle linkage. Oh, it's off out the way. Next up will be that linkage on the side there. There we are, let's get that off. That doesn't want to come off the carburetor, so we'll go for the other end. Anything to make the job a little bit easier. That's better. Right, we've got to undo this wire. Right, it's out the way. This engine was fitted to this four-wheel drive Bedford fire truck, which originally was a government truck owned by the forestry department in our area. And you can see there when you look at the hour meter, this little outfit's only done 86 hours by the hour meter, which is not very much at all. It's got two nuts up underneath there which are going to be very difficult to get to. There's our nut right there. It's got a mile of thread on it. There's the other nut. Should lift off. There we go. We'll go and pull the little fella apart and see what's inside. There we are, Solex carburetor, 32 PC PC1, made in Germany. I can just imagine there would have been plenty of VW Beetles. I'm not sure whether combis would have had the same carburetor, but I guess over the years they would have probably made millions like this. Any of the VW fans, they would know all about them. I would say that looks like that should be the accelerator pump, that diaphragm on the end there. We'll have to just pull it apart and see what makes it tick. Well, first up I'm going to try and blow any loose dirt off it. In case you're curious, this is what I'm drinking. 0 sugar, blood orange and mango. It's mid-afternoon here, so it's very hot at the moment, so I thought something like this might cool me down a bit. gloves. This is just a little trick. If you want to make these brushes work a bit better, you want to make them a bit sort of square, a bit sharper on the edges, just go along and give them a haircut, and all of a sudden they'll do the job a bit better. See how it looks, just cutting the loose stuff off the end, just get them like that so they're nice and square on the end, and you'll find they'll actually work a bit better. Doesn't look too bad. I'm going to be using diesel, but you can use petrol. Caro is probably the best, but I don't think I've got any on me at the moment. If we can put a bit all over the place, that'll let it soak a little bit. Must be the ID for the carburetor. A lot of carburetors have a little aluminium plate with the ID. Sometimes they have a few different versions of carburetors. Ford's always had a plate on there, a little plate like that in their V8 carburetors in around 1970. Some of that stuff's fairly baked on there. You can see there now, it's cleaner than what it was. A lot of the heavy stuff has gone off it. So I'll use some proper carby cleaner on it there now and see if I can just get a bit cleaner. Sometimes too, if you do this, sometimes it can seep in around the edge of the gaskets, and sometimes it does help. If you go to pull them apart, the gaskets won't break quite so easily, especially if they've been sitting for a long time. The gaskets are going to be dry and stuck. But if you spray them with a bit of stuff, and by the time you clean it up, the gaskets will soak up a bit of that stuff, and hopefully it will come apart without breaking the gaskets. This is supposed to be the stuff that's made for the job. Spray a bit down the throat, that can be soaking down there. A bit up from the other way. Well, it's a bit cleaner than what it was before. I hate pulling things apart when there's dirt going everywhere and you're pulling things apart and you're working in dirt. I'd rather go to extra trouble to clean things up first and then try and work in the clean. Very unusual being 11. Most things these days are either 10 or 12. What do we got here? We've got a second nut. I imagine that 8 look like they're going to come undone fairly easily. When you see the tags near the fuel line, so it's always a good idea to put the tag back on the same spot. If you have a magnetic dish, just drop all the parts in the magnetic dish, and if it tips over, well, they won't drop out. Still more. One more to go. Sometimes too, check that they haven't got dirt in them. If you want, you can go like that and make sure the screwdriver's going right to the bottom. That way it can't slip. Mash the heads of the screws. Looks terrible once that happens. Now, very careful with that gasket. It's come undone nicely. That's its needle and seat. If you look close, you'll see it's got a little spring-loaded thing in the needle. That needle should come out. No, it's made so it can't come out. See that little thing there? That way if the engine's vibrating, the needle will still seal off pretty good. That's a quality carburetor to have something like that in it. Now this little gasket here, I'll show you a little trick with that. With any of these gaskets, if you have a fairly new Stanley knife, and this is the best way I know of without breaking them, is try and just get in behind them. This one's going to be easy. If you just get behind them, or if they're tight from the word go, just try and work your way along on an angle like that. Just try and saw your way along and everything, and then just try and lift them up a bit. And you can see how that liquid is sort of pretty well soaked right through that paper. So that's come undone. It looks like that may even come out of there. Put that over there. Now here's our float. Righto, for those that don't know much about carburetors, the fuel comes in here. Most carburetors are only fed by 4 to 6 psi, maybe some a bit higher than that. Then the fuel comes out through these holes here, around this needle. That's just a needle. Sometimes the needle will have a little rubber on the end of it. Sometimes it'll just be metal on metal. As you can see, this one's got a little spring in it. When the float comes up, fuel comes out of here, fills the float chamber up. As the fuel comes up, see that little tiny mark there? That's where the needle touches that's where the float lever is going to touch the needle to shut it off. So the fuel's probably shut off here before this part floods, so to speak. So that part will come out of there. It doesn't look too bad inside. I thought that might have been loaded with old varnish or whatever, but we've got a few different jets around the place. On the right size screwdriver, that one fits good. Most times they'll make them so the jets will only fit back in one place. Some of these other things like that can come out. That one won't. I'm going to give that a bit of a clean in there. This will be the accelerator pump. There'll be 2 diaphragms in here. We've got this little split pin, cotter pin. I'll get some pliers and pull that out. They've always got one leg a bit longer than the other. I'll just check on that. Very careful not to flatten a little head on him. Sometimes you might have to have a couple of goes. A bit of dirt or a bit of rust around its neck. I'll put him over here with the magnets. Doesn't want to let go. We've got a washer there. I can't work with a glove on. I just can't do it. And we've got that little washer on the end there. Take that off. What have we got here? Looks like the easiest way will be just undo the end of that. I'll get a small screwdriver. They're the same. Some carburetors will have an odd screw. I don't know why they do that. Ford V8 Autolite Motorcraft carburetors always had one weird screw that held the top onto the bottom. I think one of them had a blade top and the other ones were star from memory. It does have these other couple of screws here too. Ones like that you don't really want them to slip and mash the head. They're a fair bit tighter. They're countersunk. I think the screwdriver's magnetised a little bit, which is good. When we get down to that, sometimes we can give that a bit of a go. Just a patience game. There's a fair bit of junk sitting in there. We'll give that a bit of a blowout. Here's our first diaphragm. I think I'll just blow that off of there. It's a real patience game. Not so bad if you've got another kit to put in, but I haven't got another kit. Still looks pretty good. It's gone hard and stiff, but it may still work. Spring. It looks like this next section should come off. You can see it's got a bit of rubbish laying on the bottom there. Give that a bit more of a clean. Bit of a tap. Sometimes you might be able to get a bit of a lever up against something and just put a bit of pressure on it, then just wait. There we go. Looks pretty good. You can see it's all a patience game. This one looks a little bit more complicated. Not really for the faint-hearted. It's got some sort of sealer, which is rare on carburetors. They don't normally have sealer. That's the other part of the diaphragm. I've only got part of it. I might just leave that in case I wreck it. Have another jet here on the side. I don't know whether it's actually a jet or what it is, but look at this tiny little hole in that. Looks like it's got a ball bearing in it. Is there anything in behind there? I don't think there is. Sometimes if you just loosen them a bit, and I'll blow that off there now. I wonder, does that hold the throat in? Just check for ball bearings. Nothing's dropped out. Thought it might hold that in, but it doesn't. Another little baby jet here. And that one is tight. Just have a look, see if I can see through that. I can see through that. Have a look out here. Doesn't look too bad. If you look in here, they've got a hidden mixture screw. It looks like it's got some sort of glue or something over the head of it. With the older models and that, you could just get in and adjust that. A little bung, and there's the mixture screw hiding in behind there. I'll just check to see where it's set at. I'm going to screw it in lightly just to see where they've got it set at. Screwed right off by the feel of it. It's got a weird feeling about it. It's about one turn so far. Half. One. Might not have ever been out, that screw. With that bung over the top of it. There it is, the little mixture screw. Now we've got most of the stuff pulled off it now. I'm going to give that a clean inside there with carburetor cleaner. Some people may not know about this trick. You can buy these little straws. You can buy ones that are probably nearly twice as long as that, and you wouldn't think that would fit in there. A lot of times it's very hard to get started, see, it doesn't want to go in at all. So you don't want to go spraying yourself while you're doing it. You've got to be very careful and just work that backwards and forwards like that, and that straw will stay in there now. If you want to spray into these holes or whatever, the carburetor cleaner, which is the right thing for the job. That one there looks like it could be blocked. You just go through and just spray a bit around all these little places. I'll give that a little bit of a clean in the bottom there with that brush. I've already blown the dirt off that brush. A lot of times they'll have a real little tiny jet for the accelerator pump. That's probably one of the first things to block up. This is where the mixture screw goes, in this little hole here. There's our little mixture screw, and obviously the way they work, if you screw the mixture screw in, that sort of partially blocks off the hole until you completely block off the hole. So when you screw it out, so screwing in makes lean, screwing out makes rich. A lot of them will have a spring on them, but this one just has a rubber around the end there to stop it moving. So when the mixture screw goes in the side here, the actual mixture comes out through that hole, and the hole, if you notice, is below the throttle flap. So that's what that adjusts the idle mixture only. That doesn't adjust the mixture when you're running along the road at 60 mile an hour or 100 kilometres an hour. That only does the idle mixture. Probably not. I may have to pull this off, so maybe There may be a valve or something in behind that, I'm just not sure. Yeah, there is a valve in there. I tried to blow back through here, but I couldn't. But if you have a look here at this, see how when I push on here, you'll see the fluid come out of there. See that? So there is a valve in there, there's a one-way valve. There's possibly a ball bearing or something underneath that thing. I won't worry about pulling that brass fitting out. I was just trying to see if I could force anything back through there, but I can't. See how that looks like it's blocked? So I put some cleaner in here, and you can see, if I get my finger on here and push on that, you can see it's coming out here. So there would be a ball bearing or something between here and here, and you can see that that is, put a bit more cleaner in there, you can see that that is free. So that part's right. I can even give that a little bit of a blow if I want to. This is another thing here. This is a shut-off thing. It'll have like a little stub on the end of it here, and when you put power on there, when you turn the ignition on, it'll pull this thing back. And sometimes these things can go open circuit, and they can stop working. And then of course your carburetor sort of is not getting enough fuel, or it won't idle. It might run, but it might not idle. And when you turn the key off, this thing comes out of there. The thing in the end, they'll be sprung loaded. I'll have a spring back in here somewhere. But I'm having trouble getting a spanner. As you can see, my spanner's fouling there. I can't get it on there, it's fouling this way. So a lot of these carburetor type things, they make them like that, make them very difficult for anybody to work on, to actually pull that out. I can't get it that way. It's nearly impossible to get at. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to actually get that undone. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do. I'll open them up just a little bit more. Right. Just have a baby little jet in there, look at that. It's different to how I imagine. Wow. Slipped in. Wow. Isn't that thing in there tight? I don't think I'm going to be able to get that out of there. No, I'm not going to get that. Look at that, it broke a piece out the side of it. Wow, is that thing in there? Well, next thing I'll do is do a test on it. I've got this real old meter. It's an old meter that Dad had. And I've got it on volts in here, but I'm going to put it up here on ohms. When I put the ends together now, they call that full scale deflection when it goes right over like that. So I'm going to see now whether the coil is still connected. So the coil is still good. If I can make it get good contact. if that coil gets broken and you do that and nothing happens, you can say that thing's had it, the coil's had it inside. So the next test is, you're supposed to always set these meters back on a high voltage scale, which is 500 volts DC. It's a very old meter. Righto, the cameraman's got our start button. When he pushes that button down, that'll make contact like a single wire, and all I've got to do is hold this onto here. Righto, cameraman, push the button down. Hold the button down, cameraman. Oh yeah, it's just started to work. Can you hear it clicking? That's me touching that. Righto then, I'm going to get the cameraman to push on the button. Righto, the cameraman is going to have to push the button to make the circuit. I'm going to hold that onto there, and this onto here, and then he's going to force air through the middle of it. They're pushing the button down. Righto then, righto, blow through the centre of it. Righto, work the button up and down at the same time. It appears it's working. Oops. Need that little washer. Right. Sometimes, see this hole in here? Sometimes you can get back and blow back. There's two more here, if we can blow back through them. That's about all we can do, I think. Righto, I'll give it one more go. It's the spray. I know it can't go back that way. In here. There. Which is just coming straight out the side here. There. I thought that part may have come out, but it looks like it's a... Sometimes they'll have a screw or something going in there. It's had the screw going in there, but... Idle mixture. Shut off. I still suspect that screw was holding that in. Well, that's about as clean as I can get it. And that gives you a bit of an insight. Anybody out there that's never had anything to do with carburetors before, that gives you a bit of an idea of how they work. Basically, that's the throttle flap. The more air it gets through there, that's idle, that's revving. The air screams down through here. The Venturi effect is it creates a vacuum around here and draws the fuel in. And the more air goes through, the more fuel goes from the bowl into the Venturi. And of course it's all got to be mixed at the right ratio. And then when it comes back to an idle, throttle flap shut at the bottom. And it isn't shut completely off, because here's your fast idle screw here. When that goes back around, hits the stopper. And it just works on that little tiny bit of fuel that comes through there, and a bit of air that leaks past that throttle flap. That's idle. So I will put it back together. So I don't bore you all to sleep. I'll put that back together off camera, and then we'll put it back on the motor and see if we have any luck. See if it's going to work better than what it did last time. Well, I've got the carburetor back together. I must say the diaphragm on the end here was very hard as a rock. So anyway, to soften it up a bit, I didn't have a new one there, which I probably should have done. About the only way I've ever found you can soften things like that up is have a small container, probably something that holds about a half a litre. Put the diaphragm in that, boil a jug and pour boiling water straight on top of it. Let it sit for probably at least 15 minutes, and then that will soften it up. That does make a difference. So the other thing was, when I had the top housing off the carburetor, I'm looking everywhere for the accelerator pump jet. I couldn't find it. I thought, well, I don't know how that works. But anyway, I don't know whether you can remember, there was a little bit of brass pipe sticking up out of the bottom housing. And if you can remember, I was pushing on the diaphragm, which I left on there, and a bit of fuel was coming out, so I knew that part wasn't blocked. It had like a one-way valve in there. It's got another one-way valve down the bottom here, where it looks like a bung, but it's actually a one-way valve. But anyway, when I came to put it back together, the accelerator pump jet is in the top housing. So we'll go out here in the sun. So here's the jet right in here. That's the jet right there where I'm pointing with the end of this brush handle. That's the accelerator pump jet. It's a bit of a weird looking thing, but it only has a small hole on the bottom side. That's it there. It's something I don't think you can remove. It's part of the top housing. Now the other thing I always like to do is put either grease or oil on the gasket. Always think of the next person. Remember, somebody's going to have to pull this thing off in the future, and most people are in a hurry in this day and age. So I've put oil on this gasket. Even though it came off, it didn't break. I thought, well, I'll put some oil on there to make sure it doesn't break the next time it gets pulled off. Oh well, I'll get back up here now and see if I can fit it back to the engine, back onto the engine. I'll probably have to shift a bit of stuff around. It's like most of these things, there's always one hard nut and one easy nut. Right, that's the hardest one. Some of those things can be very difficult. I made sure I had the threads wire brushed up and a bit of oil on the threads too. I'll just move this clamp down. It is snug, but maybe not quite snug enough, so I'll just move that down to there. Now we've got our fuel tap here. We've got our fuel tap here, so I'll turn that on. There's a bit of fuel starting to dribble down. Right, I'll squeeze the priming bulb on the outboard tank. I should be able to see if it got fuel. Yep, there's fuel going down the line. We've got a leak here somewhere. I'm not sure whereabouts. It nearly looked like it was leaking up around there. Check that. Can't see any fuel getting pumped. Maybe the diaphragm's too stiff. Put it this way, I can't see any fuel getting pumped via that diaphragm. Get everything here to be clean. Maybe the diaphragm's just too hard. I'm just going to hook the start button up and we'll give it a try and see what happens. Come over here to our starter motor. I really need insulated. It's got a bit of live there. I'll let it sit on there. I'll just recheck the oil. I know we checked it last time, but we'll check it again. Looks like it's down a bit on the stick. There we are, it's up to there, it's nice and clean. Yep, could do with a bit more putting in it. Work the choke because I don't think that throttle pump's working. Well, it looks like it's going to turn over, so I'll put some water in the pump now to lubricate the seal on the water pump. Pour some water into that pump. I can work the choke from here. That's a start. Looks like the original switch down there is still working for the ignition. Just to prove it is, I'll just hook that up. Then we'll come down here and we'll turn this one on. I think this is the on-off switch here, it's very stiff. And if we give it a start, so that's amazing. The wiring, that looks, all the ends look pretty corroded and that, but yeah, it looks like the switch still works. It had a start button here. You can see where it's got start written on here, and there's the button, but the button's in, it's probably all corroded inside. So that part, it needs a new start button putting on there. The other thing, while I'm on the subject of carburetors, years ago there must have been an unwritten law between all carburetor makers that most of the stuff I've worked on, it looks like if you set the mixture screw, you turn the mixture screw in until it just touches bottom, don't screw it in real hard because you might damage where the pointed part goes into the hole. Then you screw it in until it touches bottom, and then have a look at the slot. It'll pretty well always be a blade type screwdriver, and just go half a turn, 1 turn, 1.5 turns, and most carburetors will run at around about 1.5 turns. Unless you've got a really hotted up V8, and if they've got a really big lumpy cam in them, you've got a Holly carburetor or whatever on there, you might have to turn the mixture screws out 3 turns on something like that, and of course step the idle up as well. Well, the next thing will be to have a look at the pump setup, the way the taps and everything are configured, and try and work out whether some of these taps, I know some of these taps are seized pretty hard. Some would have to be turned on, some would have to be turned off. And then we could either do it 2 ways. We could try and suck water straight out of the creek, or we could put water in the tank here and try and use the water out of the tank to feed the pump, which the pump would probably pick the water up out of the tank probably easier. It looks like we've got a hole up here in the top of that manifold, but if we put some big hose clamps around there and some rubber, we could probably seal that off good enough. This tap here, well, there's another big tap underneath here. They must have had it rigged up so they could put a suction line on under here with that big tap. I don't know whether the cameraman can see that. If he comes in here, you'll be able to see there's a tap down in there. Well, it's already turned off. This one here is turned on. So the way it's set up there now, they've been drawing water out of the tank. But for us to try and suck out of the creek, we'd have to try and turn that one off. Well, I don't know whether it'll move. If I had a rubber hammer or something and tap that, I might be able to get it to move. If that doesn't move, well, then the only other way we can, I think that's still okay. So right, it gets water pressure. If it does pump, sucks the water up either out of the tank through here, or this has got to be turned off, and it'll suck water up out of the creek through this one. Pressurise this. It's got that hole in top. Pressurise down here. That tap's turned on. It looks like it has a feed line going right up to the front, where they would have had men riding around up on the roof at the front there. I guess they would have had a hose on either side. So there's a hose going up that side off that. Over here we've got 2 taps here. I don't know where that one goes to. That might be just a return. Maybe that might be something they can preset so the water's not dead-ended in the pump. They might be able to turn that on a little bit. So if they're not using the nozzles up the front, this one here would go up to the front. That'd be another one for the man on the left-hand side. This one here, that probably just goes back to the tank to recirculate, I would think. And they'd probably have to set that so there's always a bit of water going back, especially if they aren't using these other couple of nozzles up on either side. This one here would have to be turned off, otherwise there'd be water squirting out of here. These 2 are already turned off, which is right. So it's just a matter of whether these taps will move. They have been sitting for that long. Yeah, I wouldn't really know until I get a rubber hammer and see if I can, maybe even a bit of spray down their necks maybe, but they haven't been moved for a long, long time. Starting to move. I'll put a bit more spray down its neck. Right, it's right up against the stopper there, so that was a miracle that tap ever moved. Somewhere around the front here we've got wasps, but we're not quite sure where they are. They're buzzing around here, but we can't seem to find where they're going. I thought up underneath that footstep, but then they were hanging around the winch. Yeah, they're hanging around here. I'm not sure where they're going to, but I have already been around here the other day, and I just went for a walk around and just sprayed everywhere. Just kept on walking, but I had a quick look, but I couldn't see any nest anywhere. But maybe they're just another colony ready to move in. There's one out there now. They keep coming back around near that winch as if there's something. There's one hanging around there now. No, I can't really see anything, but we've got a spider living over here. We don't really need him. Must be working, he's hit the ground. You can see this line here would have been the return back to the tank. And I suppose if they weren't using their spray nozzles on the end of the hoses, they'd probably just have this tap open a bit, so the water's just recirculating back into the tank. But I had a bit more of a look. This line here looks like that's a line that goes up the front where the men could be standing either side at the front. These other lines actually go down to this drum. They actually come down in around here and they feed that. So these hoses are just like steel. And one of these ones you could touch that on the other side. This hose line here, they would have probably had a man on the ground on the end of this, and they have these DC motors here. I think the DC motor only worked to wind it back, so when they push that button that would rewind the coil of hose. The same on the other side. So they would have had a man here, a man over there, probably another 2 hoses on here coming off here, and they would have had another man possibly on either one of those. So that gives them 2 is 4 and 2 is 6 outlets. So that would have been 6 men to work all that. Plus they would have probably had a spare man, possibly to work the throttle or maybe to work that tap to make sure that if everybody turned their hose lines off, they could probably open that up, and that would just recirculate around into the tank. That way they wouldn't damage the pump. I would say this is probably going to be the easiest outlet to use. Most of those other ones are seized up like these. I might just have to go and get another cam lock fitting and a right angle bend just to direct the water away, otherwise it's going to be spraying everywhere. And the other easiest way to probably see if it's going to pump is we'll get the Bedford out of here, and we've got a ball pump here, and we'll put water in the tank. And if we can bring the level up into the tank, up to about that height in the tank's just through there. If we can bring the water level up to there, well, it should pump. It should start to pump easy. Although I was just having a look at the sight glass there too, I can see where that's broken. Yeah, well, even if it got up to the top of the sight glass, it'd be getting pretty close to being level with what it should suck up. Well, I've got the tank full, not quite full, but it's got a fair bit of water in it. And we had a hole here in the manifold in that top part. I've patched that, but then as the tank's filling up, then I notice it's leaking under the manifold. It's got a rust hole through underneath the manifold. So we've figured out how all the taps work. So I've been and bought this setup here, so we can turn that tap on. That used to be the recirculate tap that would have went through this hose back into that fitting. So we won't be using that, but we can just, that will be our only outlet apart from the leak. So we'll turn that on and give it a start and see if this pump can pump some water. Right, see what happens. Well, it blew a pretty big hole underneath here that time. Yeah, I can put those 3 fingers through the hole underneath there, so I suppose that's why the pressure dropped off out there, but it must have been a bit of mud laying in the bottom of the pipes by the look of it. There was that much mud that that fitting had actually blocked up. It started to work, and then when I unclipped the cam lock, it blew the piece out of there, and then it started pumping water out of there then. And you can see the old hose going forward, the high pressure hose that goes up to there, it actually blew a hole in the side of it too. So it must have had a fair amount of pressure. Oh well, it does pump. Still a bit of water leaking out here and there, but yeah. Oh well, after all that effort, it does prove the pump can do something. Up underneath there, the cameraman's trying to have a look at where the hole is in the manifold. I think when I revved it up, I think it really blew a big heap out. Up in there, yeah. There's a big hole right across there. Well, at least that does prove that the engine does start and pump water, and we still think it's been sitting for a long, long time. When you look up underneath there at the rust hole in the manifold and rust hole underneath there, and the old hose down here, that's a high pressure hose, and it just blew the side out of it. Like, look at it. I can feel I think it has got wire inside of it, but yeah, it just blew especially when this part up here blocked up, that fitting there blocked up with mud or rust or rocks or something. Then of course it had nowhere to go then. Normally it has this pipe here hooked onto there, which would just recirculate back into there. We know somebody that's an excellent welder, and we reckon if we could get this part here off and get everything undone and take it there, they could probably patch those places, weld all that up, and that part would be fixed then. This one I did cop a fair bit of water, but it's been such a hot day, it's not so bad at all getting a bit of cool water sprayed around on you. If you've had anything to do with these firefighting pumps, leave a comment by all means and tell us a bit more about it, because we're not really into this sort of machinery. I hope you've all enjoyed this adventure and improving something where it wasn't much chop before. At least now it's a bit better than what it was. That'll be about it for this video. So until next time, thanks very much for watching.